I'm Jared.
I'm Brandon.
This is a Heel to Face podcast. So much to talk about, so much we've been putting off, and finally maybe we'll get to it today. We got about 30 minutes to kill. Hopefully I can spend this 30 minutes without looking at my Robinhood account because that has been my new addiction. Maybe we can just talk about some wrestling for the next 30 minutes. We're on the road to WrestleMania Backlash. Blood and Guts just finished up last night. There's all sorts of biographies and so much to talk about. The Heel to Face podcast for this week starts right now.
Fans celebrate with me from Rome to Rochester.
Bad Election would be my middle name. They might as well tag me up with my buddies from Syracuse.
So this is another edition of the Heel to the Face podcast. My name is Jared. This is Brandon. Make sure you follow the program at Heel to the Face. A lot to talk about in the world of wrestling. A lot to talk about probably personally. Obviously, at the teaser, I talked about my Robinhood account. Just like everybody else, I'm in Doge Mania,
yes,
I guess you could say.
Love it.
Brother, I'm in Doge Mania.
Yes, man.
There's probably some other personal stuff to talk about. One I like to talk about that would be definitely between the two of us is the fact that AEW is going to be running at full capacity in just a few weeks at their next pay-per-view, Double or Nothing, while WWE is not running at full capacity. And some places are choosing to do that full capacity based off of who's vaccinated and who's not vaccinated. We'll talk about that maybe in a little bit because there's a few things we have differing opinions on.
Of course we do.
But I think we'll start with the differing opinion that I already know about because we talked about it. This is being recorded about a day after AEW's Blood and Guts. That was last night on TNT, an event that is over a year in the making. It was supposed to happen, I think, like March 26th.
It was.
Never happened. It's the essential AEW equivalent to War Games. I forget who was even supposed to be in the original Blood and Guts because it wasn't the Pinnacle versus the Inner Circle.
Yeah, it was completely different people.
But we got the match last night. The people in the crowd only got Blood and Guts. The first hour was pre-taped, and they watched that on TV, I guess, from Daly's Place, and probably for the fact that that cage took a little bit to set up. It didn't just come from the ceiling.
Sure.
It was probably already there. And 5 people actually wanted refunds and were granted them when they got there and realized that half of the show was pre-taped. They weren't apparently told that ahead of time.
Yeah, that's not a good look. So you're going to a show and you're expecting 2 hours of live entertainment, and no, I'm just going to have to watch the first hour on the screen.
I mean, it essentially reminds me of WrestleMania 12 when you had a 3-hour event that was broken up into 3 different venues. You got 1 hour in person, then 2 hours on closed circuit TV. And it was like that for all of them, obviously.
I don't blame those 5 people, but that's such a minuscule amount. So I think people were just like, whatever, I'm here.
I think a lot of the AEW fans that go to are there on a weekly basis. They probably have the equivalent of, I guess, like season tickets in the sense
At
of
this
like,
point, yeah.
Yeah. So I'd probably said they said 5 people, I guess, wanted refunds. But other than that, most other people are probably like, you know what? I'm going to some live wrestling. The 1 hour I'm getting is probably better than 2 hours of a typical AEW Dynamite. I'd rather have seen 1 hour of Blood and Guts and 1 hour of taped wrestling than just an average 2-hour Dynamite.
Yeah, I mean, overall, it was a good show. I mean, honestly, I'm not going to lie. I didn't know until you told me that the first hour was taped. I wasn't paying attention that much. I didn't know
until the day after. I didn't know while watching it either.
It was good. I mean, from everything I watched. I know we had different opinions on the via text last night. So
differing opinions on the end of the show because AEW has done it again, in my eyes. They've done it again where they get to an end of a show and you're like, everyone did a good job. You couldn't go out on a better note. And then all of a sudden, they realize they have another 30 seconds to kill on television and kind of take it down a notch. You know, it'd be like if you go to a concert and you see them perform all the great songs and they end on a high note. And then they're like, well, hold on, wait, we got one more song. And it's like an awful cover. And you're like, I would have just been better if you never did that. I feel that about AEW Revolution. Obviously, with the dud, would have been fine if it just went off the air with the way it was before the explosion. And then last night, I would have been fine if it went off the air with Jericho on top of the cage, being held by MJF or being, just victorious, I guess. And that would have been fine if it went off the air that way. Unfortunately, though, and this is a thing that other people are complaining about, is the production elements in the sense of camera angles, things that WWE has that they don't have.
Sure.
One, for example, is I clearly saw them right before the spot Jericho talking to MJF. Maybe the camera could have been on some other people at that time.
Absolutely.
And then they did the spot. And yes, I agree with what you told me last night in the sense of, yes, you're not going to do, I didn't want a grand spot. The spot he was dropped onto essentially a mattress. I get that, or a big beanbag chair.
Sure.
So essentially, with that being said, as bloody and as violent as a match as that was, it might have just been better without the soft spot.
I don't mind the soft spot. I think it's they did it the way they should have done it, because what's next? Like if you leave it where you have MJF and Jericho, you're almost like MJF's holding Jericho, by the end of by the top of the cage there at the end of it, and like looking like, oh, I'm gonna throw him off, and you caught. I don't, for me, I don't care for that as much, because okay,
you don't like the cliffhanger.
I like it from a storyline perspective of how they finished it more than, okay, well, what's he going to do next?
Because that
would have been leaked anyways.
That was Nitro's claim to fame. Nitro, actually, I don't know if you ever watch a lot of old Nitros. Obviously, they're on the WWE Network and Peacock and all those places.
Sure.
But that was always, and Eric Bischoff said it the same, Tony Schiavone said the same, that was their claim to fame back in the day. If you ever watch an old Nitro, it a lot of times goes off the air before even the finish of a match. They'd have a main event, and yeah, you don't want to see that too much, maybe on occasion. But yeah, they would go off the air a lot of times where it would be Tony Schiavone saying, we're all out of time, we'll have to tell you about it next week. And it goes off the air. Kind of ending you on a cliffhanger to be like, what happened? Hulk Hogan's music hit. He's running to the ring, and then they got to go.
It's a different era. It's a different era, because with social media, then what would happen is when you have a live audience perspective, like, okay, we went off the air. You don't think, say you were at the event and I'm watching it live. Dude, so went off the air. So what's going on? Oh, they're just all climbing off the cage.
No,
that's why.
I guess I understand. I don't mean like a cliffhanger, as in they'll show us what happened next week, what happened after they went off air. More or less, just end the match. Just say he won. Maybe threaten to throw him over and be like, nah, and then you're victorious.
I don't mind it, because when you, I know the spot was what it was. Yes, he landed on pillows as the joke on social media. I mean, here's the thing. Wrestling fans, you guys complain. We complain. It's just how it goes. It's just, and that's natural. We're the biggest complainers of all live entertainment, to be honest with you. But I didn't mind it from the perspective of, okay, so what's the rest of the Inner Circle going to do next? Like, are they going to attack MJF? How's Chris Jericho?
No.
How's he doing? When's he going to be back? There's so many more. Like, that was the questions I sent to you in the text last night, and I'm like, okay, so what's next for next week? Instead of having the cliffhanger, like, oh well. Did he get thrown off, or did he not get thrown off? I guess it's just a different means of entertainment, I guess. I just like it. I like it the way they did it.
I think my main reasons, because we've seen obviously that spot. That spot has happened a million times,
Sure.
and I don't hate it all the other times I've seen it. I guess the reason is because the explosion spot and this spot both come after very brutal matches. Meaning in WWE, the whole match is the spot. Like, that's the big cool spot. He falls off the Titantron into some padding. But literally, like, let's say AEW, when they had this death match, I mean, for a second, you lost me into it, in the sense of a good loss, in the sense of that's bloody, that's brutal, somebody really getting hurt here. Like, you really suspended my disbelief. And same with Blood and Guts. It was really a bloody, a brutal, an all-around match that was just such a hard-hitting match. And it's kind of like WrestleMania versus like New Japan Wrestling or something like that.
Sure.
Some people want the entertainment aspect. Some people want the more great hardcore wrestling aspect of it. And I feel like AEW does the wrestling part really well. And then at the last minute, they try to throw in like some Disney. They try to throw in a little entertainment.
I'll
and it's
give you
like
that.
It was such a hard hitting match. It was such a match that just, like WWE, they throw in that pillow spot when that's the spot. That's all they had in that match. This was like, this was, you had me on them hitting each other with chairs and being so brutal. So to end it on a soft spot, really, and goes back to AEW Revolution, obviously feeling the same way of like, this death match had it all. Like, it was brutal. It was something WWE would never go to.
Here's the
problem.
problem.
And then to end on something so like such a dud.
I'm going to take you back a little bit from the earlier part of the show that I guess was taped. Mm-hmm. So when you show Darby Allin taking the spot that he did, and then you do the Chris Jericho thing, I think that was part of the problem too, because Darby's bump there in the match, or in the, I think it was the attack, but he took a nice bump, and that looked like it hurt. Chris Jericho's didn't look like it hurt, so I get that perspective of it. The thing that maybe I would being nitpicky is they could have made like the plywood or the whatever you want, a particle board, whatever it looked like, make it look more real. To me, you could see right away that he landed on like one of those like cushions where like you see like the Trent Pastrana's like doing these crazy tricks into like a foam pit in a way.
Yeah.
I get that perspective of it, but you have to also think of safety as well. You don't want a guy like Chris Jericho being
of course
seriously
not.
injured.
I just think these matches that AEW does versus WWE has been doing, I guess, are just so good that they stand alone on themselves and they don't need this extra stuff. So I feel like
I don't mind the way they did it, though. I don't mind the way the finish progressed and how the lights went off, so to speak, because you get to wonder, okay, so what's next for Chris Jericho? What's Sammy Guevara going to do? Like, what's going to happen next? What's the next move with Inner Circle and Pinnacle? Because at this point, Inner Circle just lost their leader, or so we think at this point. We don't know what's going to happen. I assume he's not going to be on programming maybe next week, or he'll do something live somewhere else and say, yeah, I'll be there soon. Kind of.
Well, there's a lot of stuff that, they don't necessarily need Jericho next week because it's quite a stacked Dynamite card. I mean, you obviously even have John Moxley defending the IWGP US title and so much more.
That's going to be
good. This is all leading up to what's next for Kenny Omega. Either he's facing Pac or Orange Cassidy, that #1 contender match.
I mean, let's stop there for a second.
Next week on Dynamite.
I know we'll discuss that more even next week. But who do you think's the better opponent, Pac or Cassidy?
I would say Pac.
Okay, I go the other way.
I say Orange Cassidy's very interesting, but I think again from a Kenny Omega wrestling perspective, I mean Orange Cassidy's very entertaining. Maybe we could see something out of him I haven't seen yet. I guess maybe
I will tell you right now, people don't give.
I'm intrigued at both. Really,
they don't give Orange enough credit. A lot of these internet wrestling fans, they think he's just like a cool figure, cool entertainer. Like he's just kind of got this cool presence. The guy can go. Like I watched this guy wrestle. This guy's fantastic. So he doesn't get enough credit there. To me, I think he has the total package that Pac is lacking. And I'm not saying Pac isn't good. I don't think Pac is as entertaining as Orange Cassidy altogether. Do I think Pac's a really good wrestler? Of course I do. But he's missing to me the it factor. And it's not a diss to Pac because I do enjoy what he does. I think Orange Cassidy at this point, the fans love him. That's one piece. He's good in the ring. He's just entertaining. He's got the full package for anybody besides a Mox or anybody else really in the business right now on that side of things. I mean, if it's me, I'm going with him. He's just more entertaining.
I mean, either way, I think it's going to be entertaining. It's obviously a different perspective. We're not just going to see Omega versus Moxley again for the millionth time. So that's good. And it's going to happen at Double or Nothing, the next AEW pay-per-view, which will happen in front of full fans, which from what I've heard is only about 5,000 people. Apparently that's what that place holds.
That's fine. Hey, 5,000 is 5,000. We're getting fans. Mm-hmm. I'm okay with it.
So, and with that being announced, WWE hasn't officially announced, but it's been rumored even more so that Extreme Rules, which will happen in July now, is still going to be at the Thunderdome. And I guess from my perspective of WWE, I get pushing off going full time until maybe after SummerSlam because, again, they don't want to go half in. But, maybe just do the pay-per-views. Maybe that'd be a good way to start.
Here's where I think WWE's perspective is different from AEW. AEW, they have the luxury of being in an outdoor facility with Daly's Place. WWE doesn't. I mean, they have the Thunderdome, so it's two different, I guess, forms of how they present it. I guess the presentation side of it, which is fine. I think WWE, I think their thing is, and I could be wrong, but I think they want to see every state, every municipality, every country wide open again before they go wide open. Mm. I think they're waiting for that. And that's fine. That's their choice. That's their company. They're privately owned, so they can kind of do what they want.
Yeah.
But I think AEW just has the luxury where, the outdoor portion of it, you can have fans. So it's tough because WWE, what did they do at WrestleMania? They had fans. It was outside. So
I still think that there would be a possibility for them to maybe have some outdoor, obviously not to the WrestleMania extent, but maybe some smaller baseball stadiums, small soccer stadiums. And again, not for Raw, SmackDown every single week or anything like that, but maybe the next two pay-per-views.
But here's the thing: there's not every state's doing things differently with this pandemic. Some states are full throttle, wide open, and that's where Daly's Place is, for example.
Well, yeah, no, I understand. Like, let's say if Extreme Rules, which is going to be at the Thunderdome in July. Let's say they're like, you know what, it's going to be summertime. Let's have that maybe outdoors in Atlanta, in the baseball stadium there. At the clip you're allowed to have it, well, Atlanta's 100%. The Braves are at least going to be allowing 100% in about a week.
Yep.
But let's say you're still not willing to go there yourself as the WWE.
Yeah.
You could go there at maybe 40% and draw, I don't know, 15,000, 10,000, something like that. 10,000, not huge. Obviously, a pay-per-view, you could probably get $100 a ticket, so it might make up the difference of charging $15 for a ticket.
Sure.
And you're outdoors, and it again adds a different element for the pay-per-view. I guess that's the main issue. We're all having. Raw and SmackDown looks the same every week, and we've taken it for granted that it was in front of people. But when it is in front of people and a couple years go by, we'll be bored again because even though it's in different cities, it still looks the same. But pay-per-views have always had that element of standing out, being different. They're the one-a-month special. So I guess WWE could, until they're waiting to go back full-time, still do smaller, just the pay-per-views outside, and that would set them apart from the Raws and SmackDowns.
I think that's a good approach. I just don't think WWE is going to do it. I think they're going to wait till it's
No, I get it. They're waiting until they're on the road. The next show that they are in front of people will be the first of what is a continuation of shows. Once they're back in front of people again, it looks like they'll be back and the Thunderdome will be gone.
On the bright side, we might not have to wait, maybe 2 years until we go to AEW in Rochester. We're getting there. Who would have thought we would have waited another? It's been over a year. We're getting closer to a year and a half.
As of right now, what is it? I think it's scheduled for September right now.
So that's a year and a half out. A year and a half from when we were originally going to attend, which, of course, everything shut down the week before, which sucks.
So we move on to keeping with the Thunderdome theme, and that's this week, Retro Smackdown. And unfortunately, it's not in front of fans, and it's not personally to me. I wish they waited till it was in front of fans for the fan perspective. I wish it was in front of fans for the stage perspective, because, we obviously know with the Thunderdome, they're not tearing it down and then putting it back up and tearing it back down. It's set up. It's like your house. It's here to stay. It's a permanent fixture. So with that being said, I don't know what much they're going to do with the set for Retro Smackdown this Friday during Thunderdome.
I know what they could do.
I know they're gonna. I know they're gonna bring in the fist to some perspective.
There you go.
But it's kind of silly if you ask me, because I love that set. But if you remember, that set was the set for the SmackDown that started, I think, in late 2001, maybe 2002, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, right.
And then went until like 2008, 2009. But the Retro Smackdown logo they're using to promote it is from the 99.
Yeah, it's the OG.
So if you were essentially trying to keep the theme cohesive and you were using the original SmackDown theme and maybe the original SmackDown entrance, not the Marilyn Manson Beautiful People one, then you'd want the Ovaltron.
Okay.
But you're not going to see the Ovaltron because that means they'd have to tear down the Thunderdome set, and they're not going to do that.
I'm okay with
I think it's going to be the Thunderdome set with the fist.
Which is fine, because I think the fist, we've seen it on Most Wanted, so for WWE Most Wanted, so that was cool.
Yes, so, yes, it is the focal point of the warehouse. We saw it at WrestleMania during the whole John Cena versus Bray Wyatt match that they had, where John Cena, the Firefly Funhouse match, where John Cena went back in the day for a minute.
Yep.
But I guess if you're going to use the fist theme, then maybe your Retro Smackdown shouldn't be Retro 99 Smackdown. It should just be like the 2002 SmackDown.
Would you use the graphics?
I used the 2002 graphics. Yeah. I'd use the Marilyn Manson Beautiful People theme. I'd use the Glass Shatter graphic.
Man, that was a good game on, what was it, PS2 back in the day?
There was the original SmackDown on PS1 with the Ovaltron, and then I think when it moved to PS2 was about the time that it
and one of them was with Brock Lesnar was on the cover.
Yes, Here Comes the Pain.
Here Comes the Pain.
I remember the Ovaltron officially saw its demise when Rhino speared Chris Jericho through it, and then it was the next week. They had the all-new set, the new entrance, obviously.
Come on, Rhino. Why'd you do that?
And so, that was an iconic moment in the history of SmackDown. I think, trying to be silly here, but the retro graphics they're using outside of the logo itself is a little going back too far, meaning they're using, like when they say Retro Smackdown, you have to remember it's 1999. Like some of the graphics they're trying to do to promote the match between Seth Rollins and Cesaro look more like 85, like 19.
Yeah, they're going a little too old.
They're going old school.
Okay,
like,
let's be honest, we're not that old. Okay?
Like they're going back to so the SmackDown logo is from 1999, but the way that they're presenting it like retro Raw, when they do old school Raw, they're trying to present it like 1991.
So 99, dude, that's 22 years ago. Wow.
But again, graphics wise, we didn't have high definition TVs yet, but we were a little more updated.
You know what's funny though? But now that you're saying that, you watch old clips of like stuff, even from like 2007. You're like, wait, I thought it was a great picture back then.
Yeah.
It's so weird. We've come a long way technologically.
You don't know any different, and especially now, obviously, if you're going to watch something from 2007 or play old video games, the ideal way to do it is to do it on old CRT TVs and not do it on the flat screens.
Sure.
Because it doesn't present it the same way.
It doesn't look. It looks funky. Yeah.
Well, one person who won't be at SmackDown this week after he lost his match last week on SmackDown in the championship was Daniel Bryan, and it's been reported that his contract did indeed expire following his match. Where is Daniel Bryan going from here? Should they have done the CM Punk gimmick where he won the championship belt and then act like he was taking it hostage and that he was out of contract and ran off with it.
I don't like that perspective because Roman Reigns is on fire. I mean, I do like it. I do like it from a booking perspective, but you just can't take the title off Roman Reigns at this point. I think Daniel Bryan's going to re-sign with WWE. I've read reports and different sources out there that are saying even AEW doesn't think Daniel Bryan's coming to AEW. Ring of Honor's reached out. I did mention a Ring of Honor kind of jokingly a little bit last week. Ring of Honor's reached out. I guess they've been in contact. So Ring of Honor could be a sleeper team.
Daniel Bryan is a lot like CM Punk in the regards that I don't think it's a financial gain that's going to be taken in one way or the other.
It's more
personal freedom.
Personal freedom. Exactly. That's the right word. He's got a family, wife, 2 children. I think he wants to work like we talked about last week, kind of maybe in that Chris Jericho style, or maybe not Brock Lesnar to that extent, but maybe
Brock Lesnar though is about the money. He's about the work and the money. He wants a little both.
I'm saying with the schedule wise, I mean, he could do a little bit more than what Brock Lesnar's doing. Show up here and there and just make an appearance. Maybe go down to NXT and do some matches with like a Tommaso Ciampa of the world. Some matches.
I can definitely see Daniel Bryan back in NXT, and that would be really good.
I think it'd be fun because you get some really fresh matchups that a lot of people would consider dream matchups. So for me, short of the kind of cutting to the chase to it, I would say Daniel Bryan will resign with WWE. I think they're closing in on a deal. That's what I would say at this point.
One thing that we've wanted to talk about now, moving on for a couple weeks now, since the start of the show, and then it's brought up a lot of questions, we just haven't had the time, is the AEW show Most Wanted, which is finding old WWE treasures. Obviously, they've had episodes so far with Mankind, Undertaker, and most recently Jerry the King Lawler, where they go back and they find old memorabilia and to bring it back to WWE. A lot of these occasions, WWE gave it out, meaning like somebody in the Mankind situation won one of his costumes in a charity of WWE to bring in charity money. But now WWE is paying him more money to bring it back. And that obviously beckons the question, why would WWE want all this stuff unless they were having a plan to do something with it? Obviously, the Triple H says in the show multiple times, we want to bring it back to WWE so it can be experienced and viewed by the WWE universe. Well, I've never been in the WWE warehouse, unfortunately, and neither of you, I don't think, Brandon.
Most people haven't,
for them to say that, it must mean that they're having a plan for that to happen. Vince McMahon has gone on record and says that he thinks a brick and mortar Hall of Fame / museum would be a waste of money. And it's hard.
Well, let me hold on a second. I mean, I'm not going to try to tell Vince McMahon how to spend his money, but I think he's wasted money on XFL a few times. What the hell's the difference of putting a great Hall of Fame in?
Yes. I think though, and I do understand from Vince's perspective that a Hall of Fame is really cool. It'd get a lot of people to go, but once you've gone once, then you don't need to go again. I mean, how often do you visit the Baseball Hall of Fame? That doesn't really change.
Once a year.
You visit it once a year.
I do.
That's actually more than me, and I'm a baseball fan because it doesn't change that often.
It's a nice, and it's weird because this guy right here travels more than anybody I know. Yeah, I mean, obviously COVID kind of changed things a little bit, but yeah, I try to go every year at least once. It may not be the Hall of Fame week. It might be just a random day during the week that I, have.
It's a nice drive, definitely. If you're from the Central New York area, one of the better drives that you can take, especially in autumn and stuff like that.
Beautiful, and you know what? I would do the same thing depending on where the Hall of Fame is. I mean, if I would assume it's in Connecticut, maybe New York City.
Well, that's the question. Where do you think if they're going to have? So I can understand that Triple H. He said that he agrees with Vince McMahon that a traditional Hall of Fame would be kind of a waste of money. It'd be something you visit and then that's it. So he thinks that they should have some sort of it should be something similar to, I don't know if you're familiar with like the Coca-Cola Museum down in Atlanta, but it's like a 4D experience, as they call it. They give you a bottle of Coca-Cola. You get to try some stuff. You get to watch a 3D movie, like an IMAX movie. That kind of.
They makes a difference.
Down in like New York City, for example, like similar to more like Ripley's Believe It or Not. Like it's not just you look at stuff, but there's a little interaction. A lot of these children's museums nowadays, especially like the one we have in Syracuse or in Rochester, there's things for you to touch, things for you to do. Obviously, in the wrestling's perspective, Triple H has talked about, what about watching live wrestling? What about having some NXT guys down there? That kind of thing.
It could be almost like
it'd be like Access.
Yeah, I mean, you could make it where there's live Evolve or something there.
Yeah,
something at that.
Yeah,
I mean,
yes.
or you have NXT, or every once in a while, maybe we're gonna, instead of the Hammerstein Ballroom, we're gonna do it live from the WWE Hall of Fame.
I mean, and that's the thing. Like, it's I imagine it's going to be presented similar to Access. Access is essentially all that. You get to see, I've seen the Elimination Chamber, the Hell in a Cell. I've got to do a fake entrance, pretend I'm doing play-by-play, sit in one of the Undertaker's coffins. But then they also got autograph signings. They also got live matches. Yep. They also got places to get my picture taken, me to watch a minute of a WWE movie and give my opinion on it for like a free WWE prize, like all that kind of stuff. So I guess my question to you is, if there is a brick and mortar Hall of Fame, where should it be? How should it be presented?
I mean, it's two places for me. I mean, you have to decide, do you go to New York City for obvious reasons, or do you go to Connecticut, which is where WWE's headquarters is?
See, I would say it's multiple places, but I would definitely say that New York City is definitely on the table. It's a tourist attraction, a big time one. I would definitely say I'd put New York City over Connecticut itself, just because of the fact that, you know, people don't really travel. It's the headquarters, yes, but
here's the thing. I mean, if you would have told people in like for baseball, oh, you got to go to Cooperstown. You know what I mean?
I think, though, from WWE's perspective, and just with what I just said about Vince McMahon thinking it's a waste of money, you don't want to make it like a pilgrim. You'd like to put it where people kind of already are. So maybe you can attract in the non-WWE fan.
Connecticut's not that far from New York City.
Well, no, it is not. But I mean,
it's a hop and a skip.
If you fly into New York City from another country, you probably aren't even renting a car. You're just doing everything you can do on foot.
Sure. I mean, for me, if the HQ is in Connecticut, which last time I checked, I think it is, I think you do it in Connecticut.
See, I think if they're going to do it, if I was just take a wild guess, and I think it's probably smart, probably going to do it in Orlando.
That's actually not a bad idea. So I will give you that.
And it doesn't have anything to do with WWE, obviously, running NXT there or any of that stuff, which it actually, well, now that I start to think through it myself while I say this, it might actually, because WWE NXT's there, and if you're going to have NXT matches on the weekends, that would be the way to go.
You know what? Now that you say that, makes sense.
But I didn't even say it because of that as much as I just said it as it's just a destination for families. I imagine this Hall of Fame is going to be sold to families. This museum is going to be sold not just to hardcore wrestling fans, but to families.
Jared will be there first night it opens.
I'll hopefully be there the first night it opens. But, I mean, that's why WrestleMania does so well when it's in Orlando. They really bank in the theme of, like, taking your family to Orlando, going to Disney World and Universal Studios, and then going to WrestleMania.
It's a sight thing. I mean, but
it's a Las Vegas for families.
Yeah, it really is.
Yes. So, I mean, that's why I think Orlando would be on the table. But, you know, there are other locations. You know, what about Las Vegas itself? You might not know this, and I didn't even know this. WWE actually bought an old casino and actually went through with the plans to make WWE Hotel and Casino in like 1999. There's T-shirts that were made up that wrestlers wore, like jobbers would wear when they would come out for squash matches. That never happened. It never got off the ground.
Do they still own the property?
They don't any longer own the property, but they did. Again, they purchased a casino when it was going under and put the plans in to make it WWE Hotel and Casino. There's advertising for it. You can find it online, like images of what it was going to look like.
Man, that would have been cool.
Yeah, it just never happened. But again, that was also during the Attitude Era. WrestleMania 9, if you remember, in Las Vegas, was during the era of Las Vegas being a very family-friendly destination. A couple years later, when that kind of flopped, didn't work out, families didn't flock to Las Vegas like they thought, they went back and they went to the adult playground, as they currently are to this day.
Sure.
So obviously WWE putting the casino in there was themed during the Attitude Era when it was the TV-14 product, when they were going towards the 18 to 35 demographic.
Edgier. Yeah.
So I imagine nowadays, if they were to put in something, it would probably be in Orlando. You know, what about traveling? I mean, I thought about that myself. What if, because Access is at WrestleMania, what if essentially it's just an Access, but before every wrestling pay-per-view? Like every wrestling pay-per-view, or at least maybe the big four, have this Access, this Hall of Fame.
I mean, it wouldn't be a bad idea.
They did a Royal Rumble Access that was similar. When I went to the Royal Rumble, I think that's the only time they've ever done a Royal Rumble Access. SummerSlam, they didn't do one, but they did have a superstore set up when I went to SummerSlam recently, and they had like an autograph signing with some memorabilia present, but it wasn't like a full-on access. Mm-hmm. But yeah, to that extent, maybe a traveling thing, because again, it's always going to be in fresh eyes. It's always going to be new. It's not going to be just, oh, I live in Orlando. I've seen it 1,000 times. I don't need to go again. It's always fresh. It's always new. Every time it shows up to a new city, they got new things to show you. So if you went into Royal Rumble, you want to go again at WrestleMania. I mean, because personally, I've gone to Access and I've only gone once, because once you've seen it once, you don't need to go 1,000 times.
No, it's you've seen it once, it's done.
But after 4 or 5 years, you kind of want to go again to see what they got new. And again, that would be like that, but every couple of months it would be like that. Or even if they had the same exhibit for the first 4, once they turn it around for next year, it'd be, you know, they can then do it then. Like if you go to the Baseball Hall of Fame, for example, I do go more than once ever, but I don't go every year. I go maybe every few years, because it's every few years they change some things up. So
I'm surprised, by the way. I figured you'd go every year just to go.
So speaking of treasures and speaking of that, as we start to wind down the show a little bit, AJ Francis, a guy you've seen on AEW Treasures. He's been the one going around.
Wait, AEW Treasures.
A&E WWE hidden
There you
treasures.
go. There you
AEW doesn't really have much treasures yet. Maybe the real explosives that were supposed to go off at AEW Revolution.
That's a collectible.
I'd like to find those. But AJ Francis, who's been on the show, front and center, going door to door with all the wrestlers, he made his debut as an NXT superstar this week when he helped out Isaiah Scott.
Yeah, Swerve.
Yeah.
He's part of Swerve's crew. So when I saw him in that segment there, I was like, whoa. Seen him before.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because, again, he's literally on the show now. And I remember he said he's a WWE superstar in training.
Yep.
But you're like, well, now that we're so exposed to you on this show, it's going to be hard to see you in a wrestling ring because we see you once a week. Like, again, obviously we know The Undertaker's a real person. But if we would have saw him once a week in real life, it would have been hard for me to then see him once a week in wrestling character.
I like it. I think it's cool. I think he brings a different aspect to the it's not only because he's on with, he's going with these legends to find this memorabilia, but now he's on NXT. So you get both perspectives of like reality, NXT. I think it's cool.
On the main roster, we had Monsoor make his debut, and after winning 49 straight matches, Goldberg style, in television, he made his Raw debut and immediately lost by disqualification to Sheamus. Did you like that decision?
I'm not gonna lie, I didn't even see the clip. It must have been I watched that on Hulu, so I didn't. They had to edit it out. It was the shortened version of it. I did see clips later on. I'm like,
I mean, obviously
okay.
he could have eventually lost, but you could have hyped it up a little more. I mean, he did win 45 straight matches on WWE television through NXT and NXT UK and Cruiserweight and all that stuff.
I'm not gonna lie, I haven't been following him, so I didn't even know he had that many wins.
Yes, well, again, that's WWE's fault for not promoting it better.
Yeah.
And essentially, now that he's on Raw, they obviously could have promoted it really well. And obviously, he's already got 49 wins under his belt. So wouldn't it have been like Goldberg style in the sense that you got to wait? Like you're already in 50 wins. So essentially, by this summer, you'd be interested because he's already in he's already done the work off main WWE eyeballs. So he comes in with the win streak. He comes in as the instant character.
I'm not gonna lie, they haven't packaged him right. So that's the issue. They haven't really built him up. So even though he just had his first loss and had all these wins, why do I care? You know what I mean? I'm not saying it in a bad way. I'm just saying, what's going to make me, oh my God, I got to watch this and see when he's going to lose. When's he going to finally lose? They didn't build it right, so that's on WWE.
Well, what about this? They didn't. I don't know if necessarily they built this right because it happened on main event, but Jinder Mahal made his return to WWE television, beating Jeff Hardy. What do you make of Jinder Mahal's return, and what do you make of him beating Jeff Hardy and Jeff Hardy's loss, essentially, in the matter?
I don't mind it because Jeff Hardy losing doesn't really hurt him. I think it's all about building Jinder Mahal back because of his injuries that he's had. He came back from an injury and then got hurt again.
You want to see him world champion again?
I don't think so. I wouldn't mind seeing him, and I know this is probably a cop-out answer, but I'm going to say it anyways. I'd like to see him in the IC U.S. Title picture. I don't see him as a main event player. I think he's a mid-card guy, which is fine. You need to have good mid-cards. Not everybody can be a main event star. You just need to have some depth, and he's a good depth, as we like to say in sports, a good depth player. You can put him in a situation, and he does well. So WWE Universal Champion, main event champion, no. U.S. champion, IC champion, yes. And I got to ask you one other thing. I know we talked off the air. RK Bro, another win, getting a nice push. I like it. I think it's going to give. I mean, Randy Orton can do whatever he wants. He's a Hall of Famer at this point. But what he's doing right now for Riddle is absolutely fantastic. Riddle just needed some nudge, and I think this is going to put him in that main event category. So kudos to Randy Orton for seeing it, and Matt Riddle and him look great together. I'm looking forward to the build. Maybe a future tag team title holders coming soon.
So as we close the show this week, a few final tidbits. We wanted to talk about it last week. I guess we'll talk about it a little this week. The official the return of the show, The Dark Side of the Ring. I was thinking AW. We just talked about that so much. A&E or A&C. Look at that.
See, you're getting all mixed up.
Dark Side of the Ring debuts this week. Brian Pillman, a 2-part special. Are you excited for that?
Yeah, I'll be watching. I know it's on tonight, so I will be watching on Vice. So I hope you guys watch it too. It looks like it's going to be good.
So we'll talk about that. Maybe I'll finish watching the Macho Man biography and what other biographies A&E brings our way. Next week, obviously, we have WrestleMania Backlash, so this show, we will hype that up as well. And so much more to talk about in the world of professional wrestling as we lead the WrestleMania Backlash. Dark Side of the Ring's debuting. Summer is coming, hopefully, fans. But either way, we will be here. For Brandon, I'm Jared. This has been another edition of the Heel to the Face podcast.